Of the many wonders of the Cosmere, Forgery is by far the most fascinating that I've ever come across. Forgers, by the nature of their craft, must reach a heightened understanding of realmic theory and the fundamental nature of the Cosmere. I suspect that forgers can be numbered as some of the earliest metaphysical scholars in the post-Yolan Cosmere. Forgery is the expense of cell investiture into the spiritual nature of an intelligent entity, changing its cognition and spiritual history. These changes cascade into the cognitive intelligence of the object and subsequently change the nature of the object's cognitive form. This change is then reflected in the physical realm. As you are likely aware, cognitive and physical changes are relatively common in the Cosmere, especially on Roshar, where soul casting provides the clearest example of this quantum relationship. However, the ability to affect the spirit web of an intelligence is far rarer, especially in such specific and dramatic ways. I appreciate that the mechanics of forgery can be complex, so I will attempt to break them down in the simplest way I can manage. I have read your most current studies of the spiritual aspects of feruchemy, and your understanding of these arts will be the cornerstone of this letter. In feruchemy, the practitioner can store up the spiritual manifestation of concepts like fortune, identity, and connection. With the storage and pulling of these various aspects, the feruchemist twists the spirit web, which changes the way intelligent beings interact with them. Note, intelligences are a reference to both animate and inanimate objects that have a cognitive presence. This alters the flow of investiture, power, and even plucks at the strings of fate. Yes, I was surprised to discover that fate is essentially a reality of the Cosmere. When we have slivers who can see the future, it can be nearly impossible to outmaneuver their plans. Yet investiture by its nature can change fate by altering the paths taken, dispelling the idea of absolute fate in favor of a dynamic collection of branching conductor fields of existence. But I am getting ahead of myself. While the ability to manipulate the spirit web through feruchemy holds incredible potential, these changes are situational and often time-locked. While a metal mind does effectively shuttle attributes in investiture through time, they can only store at one point, to then be used at a future time. A feruchemist may be able to influence his luck through storage and then subsequent drawing out of fortune, but they cannot change the events of the past. Forgery takes this to the realm of quantum entanglement and actually pushes an object's spirit web into a parallel potentiality of the past, accessing metaphysical information that is beyond the barrier of time dilation. By all accounts, this should be impossible. In fact, I haven't come across any accounts of shards actively altering reality by manipulating the spirit web backwards in time. This is a disturbing and fascinating discovery that I feel many of my fellow scholars have overlooked. It can be easy to overlook, considering the Cosmere is filled with apparent exceptions to the rules, but reaching back against the flow of time opens the doors to staggering implications in the realm of physics and realmic theory. Even with my extensive years of study, I feel I can barely brush against the momentous truths that this revelation brings. Naturally, this process is temporary in the best of times. Often these changes cannot maintain themselves longer than a day without needing to apply another crafted stamp. The process likely devours investiture at an incredible rate to maintain an effective bubble of altered time, along with an object's or person's past. Despite the incredible powers that I will soon be outlining, keep in mind that the physical limitations of Celian magic and the likely persistent need for investiture limits the long-term effectiveness of these powers. Perhaps there are workarounds, but as of now I am unaware of any particular method of changing the current status quo. As for the mechanics of this miraculous transformation, they are fairly straightforward. Ironic, considering the implications of what this power is actually doing to the Cosmere. The forger creates what is called a stamp out of a stable material. The best materials are those that can be shaped into delicate patterns, but then baked or locked into a rigid shape that is unlikely to break. Often a template is created for stamps that are intended to be maintained over a length of time, so new stamps can be crafted and imprinted routinely. Understanding the culminated history of a person or object that is to be forged is critical in the development of a stamp that is stable enough. Forgers often remark on the need of believability for such changes to be made with any sense of stability. I feel that the underlying issue is the result of instability inherent in the creation and sustaining of time-opposed attractor fields. The closer such realities are to the tangible timeline, the less investiture and time-space warping costs. By extension, the more likely a history of an object is to the forger's desired form, the more stable the stamp can be. For instance, it's nearly impossible to stamp iron into gold by trying to change the metal's physical nature. Rather, the forger learns about the mine where the iron was collected, and alters the mine's location, or changes the nature of the trade service that provided the metal. These changes work off an understanding that a mistaken delivery, or a production order being placed with a different mine in the same region, is far more likely than altering the planet's metallic formation. Even so, these changes are likely too unstable to be useful. Intense study and reasoning is required to make any change. This is why stamps that restore an object rather than replace it are often more common. Once a stamp has been completed, an individual simply applies the stamp to the surface of the object, usually in an inconspicuous location, where the stamp begins to activate. A properly crafted stamp will resonate with the identity of the object it has been crafted for, and will start to bond with it. From my studies, it can be assumed that the stamp at this point begins to bond through all three realms simultaneously, which is why it seems to meld into the surface of the object without physically altering or damaging it. The stamp is then locked into place and activated. If crafted properly, the stamp will take, and the alterations will take hold almost immediately. Forgery has perhaps the most boundless of practical and fantastical uses of all investiture-based magics that I have ever seen. However, it also has some of the harshest limitations. Firstly, it is one of the Celian magics, which is locked to the geographical location of its native continent. The further away from its homeland, the weaker these stamps become. Perhaps with artificial identity and connection methods, this barrier could be overcome, much like how the Eyrie must exist. Yet there are other issues. Often the practitioner needs an intimate knowledge of an object or person's history. This would be difficult for a world hopper who hasn't spent decades living on worlds like Roshar or Taldane, which have very different geological and physical histories as planets, let alone their cultures and technology. Furthermore, the need for a consistent source of investiture is a large issue. Perhaps a scholar, far cleverer than I, will find a way to let a stamp feed off a local source of investiture, like Rosharian Stormlight, but such knowledge eludes me for the moment. Not to say that it's impossible, but using stamps off-cell seems unlikely to me given Cell's unusual investiture situation. Not to say that it's impossible, but using stamps off-cell seems unlikely given Cell's unusual investiture situation. I trust this letter will find you well, considering everything that's going on. The Cosmere continues to be a realm of conflict and struggle for both men and gods. Yet as we continue to peel back the layers of mysticism surrounding the shards, I feel we will eventually see wonders beyond our current reckoning. Give my best to Harmony. Elsric. P.S. I just acquired some new books at one of the trading posts I passed while on my way to visit Roshar. Look forward to a real treat when I return.